Testing, testing. Didn't work on my end. Try again. Testing, testing. All right, I got something that time. Well, cool. Welcome to my first stream. This is going to be really super unpolished, but I'm really looking forward to starting this channel. Going to be planning a CDN here, but first off, an introduction. Wow, I'm going to look back at this stream and honestly, a year from now, I'm going to laugh and cringe because I'm really bad at public speaking. I am just kind of putting myself out there and seeing if I can even make a channel. Let's see, I am not currently comfortable with putting my name or my face out on YouTube, but I'd say this counts as going out of my comfort zone quite a bit. Let's see, first of all, what's a CDN? A lot of you probably already have the gist of it, but let's go over some of the basics. CDN, in general, is a way to take your content from whatever server is being hosted, web server, Netflix or other similar streaming services will, host video content, obviously. And the idea is that you want that content to get to the client as quickly as possible, with as little latency as possible. You also want to make sure that your servers aren't being hit too often. That is, you want to decrease the amount of traffic on any single server as much as possible. So when you attach your server behind a CDN, what it does is that CDN by the way, stands for, I'm going to be embarrassed if I get this wrong, Content Delivery Network. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, Content Delivery Network. The idea is that CDN will act as kind of a buffer or a cache between your clients and your servers. Now, this is all assuming you understand how web requests work. I'm going to be talking about HTTP specifically. There's more types of content, like I said, that can be distributed over CDN, but we're going to be talking about HTTP today. So if you don't understand HTTP, you might want to get caught up on that. But if your client sends an HTTP request to your server, what you really want is for them to send it to one of the CDN servers. That CDN server will then send, this is very simplified, a request to your server, get the response, and then cache it in the CDN server. They'll store a copy of the response for however long your server decides it's relevant for, or until it says it expires. That CDN server then responds back to the client, and on subsequent requests, that if the request is the same and then the response, it can be assumed, will be the same. So instead of having the client request it directly from your server, which might be, 1,000 miles away, it can request it from the CDN server that it connected to, which might only be 10, 20 miles away, 100, I don't know. It depends where the CDN servers are set up. All right, I'll be honest, for my first stream, I'm actually getting just a small panic attack. I am going to take a break, hydrate, and be right back. All right, I'm so sorry about that. I do unfortunately have chronic, what's the thing called? Some sort of anxiety. So I'm hoping that in future streams this won't be as much of an issue, but I've been able to calm down just a little bit. I do hope that my explanation of CDNs was satisfactory enough. If not, please, I know that there's currently no one watching, but if someone does happen to jump on in the next, half hour, just go ahead and put it down in the chat if you'd like some clarification. However, we're going to get into planning CDN. So I'm going to basically be trying to make my own CDN, which I can't even explain is a huge project for just one person. Let's see what we've got. I'm just going to go ahead, go in here and figure out what my plans are going to be, right? So I have to have some kind of, sorry, my dogs are going crazy. Some kind of list of requirements for this CDN. So what are the main things a CDN does? Well, it needs to cache content. Related to that, we need to be able to purge content. That is to say, if our CDN is serving content for xyz.com, xyz.com should have the ability to say, hey, all of this content related to my website or just this path on my website needs to be purged now. We also, let's see, we need to just have standard expiry. So let's say, this is an easy one. Let's say a JavaScript file. We can say that, or xyz.com can say, all right, I'm going to give you this JavaScript file, and it is only valid for the next 2 days, 2 hours, 2 weeks, whatever they want to say, that's what we can do. And as soon as that expiry date is up, we delete it from our cache. And as soon as the client requests that JavaScript file again, that our CDN server has to go back to xyz.com and ask for it again. So we cache content, we can purge it, we can have it expire at predefined times. Next, we want it to be geographically, how would you say that? Geographically load balanced. It's not quite the right way to say it, but essentially what that means is our CDN will have its own servers set up, let's say on, let's start small. We'll only have a couple of servers throughout just the US. We'll have one in the Northeast, one in the Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, and Central US. 5 total servers throughout the US. That is, gotta say, a super small CDN. But essentially, let's say someone in Arizona is requesting from xyz.com, which, let's say xyz.com is in Britain. I guess it would be xyz.co.uk or whatever the actual. In any case, let's just say xyz.com. If someone in Arizona requests from them, then they'll actually be redirected to our Southwest CDN server. Then that Southwest CDN server, first of all, might check the other CDN servers, see if they already have a particular file that's being looked for. If not, that's okay. It'll just reach out straight to xyz.com, grab that file, cache it, and then send it off to the client who asked for it. Next time that client or anyone in that region asks for it, they'll go back to the Southwest server and it'll be right there, assuming it hasn't expired or been purged. Let's see. Another thing is we want local load balancing. And this is what load balancing really is. Let's spell that correctly. So in our, let's just stick with the Southwest here for now. In our Southwest CDN location, let's say it's getting millions of requests every minute. Well, that's not enough. One server is not enough, anywhere near enough to handle all that. Concept of load balancing lets you spin up multiple servers with the same app running on each one. And the idea is that there's one coordinator. That coordinator is going to be taking those requests, millions of requests per minute, like I said, and it's going to be divvying them up between all of those different servers with the same app running on them. Mind you, all of these servers are right next to each other, running on separate machines. Most likely in a data center. It might be AWS or Google or what would it be? Microsoft Azure. Could be Linode, whatever. Point is, all of those servers in the Southwest location are right next to each other, and clients in that region are essentially requesting from that cluster of servers, but it's being spread out among them so that no single one of those servers is too overburdened. Now, as part of that load balancing, what we need to do is make sure that A, there are enough servers to load balance among. So let's say we have 2 servers, that's still not enough. Well, is 10 enough? Is 100 enough? Don't know. We'll get to that in a second. We also want to make sure that we don't have too many servers. Let's say we're only getting 1,000 requests a minute. That might seem like a lot, but really, realistically, depending on what type of request it is, one server could do the trick. If it's really big files, might not quite handle it, but if it's just a couple of JavaScript files or, style sheets, easy. One server could handle that. The idea, though, is that we want it to be dynamic. So if we have a big spike in traffic, we want to have it automatically spin up a couple more servers. Like, let's say we have one server running, and we go from 1,000 requests a minute to 1,000,000. Usually not going to go up that much, but let's say that we're getting DDoSed. Well, let's not call it DDoS because that'll be another requirement that we want to look at in a minute. But let's say that for some reason our traffic does actually spike that much. We go ahead and spin up a couple more servers based on, there are a couple different things you can base it on. But the one I'm going to mention right now is responsiveness of the current servers. So if the current servers are not responding quickly, then it means they're busy. Therefore, we need to spawn up another server. Now let's say that we keep going through this, we keep going spinning up servers so that we can handle the volume of requests. And let's say we end up with, 50 servers spawned up. That is honestly too many to have going at the same time, depending on our usual volume. Well, if we have servers that are frequently underutilized, we can automatically detect that and take them down. With services like AWS, Azure, Linode, the ones that I mentioned earlier, you're basically paying for what you use when you use it. The idea is you don't want all those servers running unless you need them at that moment. So we're just going to go ahead and put this into our list of requirements. This is not, by the way, a formal requirements worksheet, but this is also not a formal software development setting. I am a solo developer at the moment. So we're going to have dynamic server and resource allocation and deallocation. All right, let's look at what's next. There's a bunch more, but why don't we look at DDoS and security and all that? Because I mentioned it earlier. So, if you're not familiar, DDoS, or DOS in general, DOS stands for denial of service, not the old Microsoft operating system. We're not talking about that. This is DOS, denial of service, and it's a type of attack where essentially, oh, DDoS, by the way, is distributed denial of service. But the end effect is the same, where if someone uses this against your server, then your server is too busy handling basically a flood of incoming garbage requests, and it can't handle any more requests. So the garbage requests outnumber the legitimate requests, and your whole server is bogged down and no one can access your web application. So our CDN servers must have DDoS protection. Also, be good if they have a web application firewall, but we're going to talk about that later. Like I mentioned before, this is a humongous project, and we're not going to try to plan all of it at once. We're just going to go for the basics right now so we can get us a minimum viable product going. So we want to be able to spin up those servers in such a way that they all have the same application running on them, the same CDN software on them, so that it doesn't matter which server gets the request. You know what? I'm going to call that good for now. Let's try to get this into a slightly more formal set of requirements. So we have caching content. We want to be able to cache different file types. Focus on cacheing static files. Here's a future requirement. Dynamic caching. That's probably not the correct term for it. I have not actually worked very much with the inner workings of CDNs previously. But what I'm talking about here is the ability for the CDN itself to run some of the dynamic computations that would normally be run on xyz.com's servers themselves. That is just a little bit more complicated, so we're not going to focus on that at the moment. All right. What else related strictly to caching? We have to be able to cache different file types, focus on caching static files. Say it's good for that. Definitely go ahead and let me know in the chat, assuming anyone joins the chat, joins this stream in the next little while. I am planning on ending within, the next 20 minutes. This isn't going to be a super long stream. But let's go ahead and talk about what purging content entails. So let's say xyz.com requests to have their content caches purged. Caches, thank you. What do we want to do when that happens, right? So if they want to purge based on just a single path, Like, let's say it's xyz.com/js/script.js. You know, very simplistic, but let's say they only want to purge that one. Well, what we want to do is make sure that this file or path is purged. How do I put this? At all locations. At all CDN locations. And all yeah. And if they want to purge based on domain, so if they want to purge all of the static content for their whole domain, make sure the whole domain's static content is purged at all CDN locations. Might seem like I'm writing too much down here, and maybe I am, but I don't think so. Because even with something as simple as this, I don't want to forget anything. And it's going to be super easy to just forget one little thing later on down the road. Expiry. This is a separate functionality from purging. So purging would be done after xyz.com gives us their files. Let's say they've already given us that script.js and they say, all right, we want to purge that even though its expiry date hasn't come up quite yet. Expiry is actually done in the response headers of the HTTP response. I forget exactly what the header's called, but that's what Google's for. But the idea is that that's done at the time that the file is returned to our CDN. So we want to make sure, we want to have each server make sure to delete expired files from the cache. And I not type today. Or ever, possibly. Is that enough detail for expiry? All right, this one might seem super obvious, but I'm just going to say, make sure each let's see, save the expiry date of each file. Again, might seem super obvious, but I don't want to forget it later when I'm actually putting it into the code. All right, we want this to be geographically located, load balanced. There's got to be a better way to say that. Geographically distributed. Distributed. I like distributed better. Geographic distribution. I like that. Have copies of the same CDN server running in different locations. Now, here's the question. How do we have people in Arizona contact the Southwest location and people in, oh, Connecticut contact the Northeast location. That is that's an interesting bit of technology that I honestly have not worked with or researched in a while. In fact, the last time I learned anything about that was in college. So I am going to have to do some research on that. But essentially, how that works is in the DNS, there is some way based on where a person is to have the DNS servers near them give them an IP address that's different from if they were somewhere else. Again, I haven't learned about this in quite a while. I'm going to have to research it. But it is possible. It's done every day, every second. But I'm just going to. Gosh, my phone needs to stop giving me notifications. All right. We're going to research DNS. Oh, how do we want to say this? Geography based DNS. Geography. Yep, I can't type. However, that is what it's going to do. All right, local load balancing. So for this, there are honestly a ton of different ways to do it. I have not worked directly with load balancing. By the way, I didn't introduce this in my intro section. So I'm a software developer who works essentially by myself at a company that I started right after college. Sorry, I didn't start the company. I started working there right after college. I've been out in the field for, I'm going to say 3 years now. So you wouldn't call me seasoned or senior developer. I have a good bit more experience than someone who's just in college, but there is plenty that I still have left to learn. And I'll be honest, if you guys want to have me look stuff up, have me research things, even if you want to have me do it live on stream, that would be great. That would be, I mean, having more things to do on stream is always great. But a couple strategies for load balancing you can use, and I've heard this pronounced a couple ways. The way that I like best is Kubernetes. You can go ahead and hate on that if you want. There are also, let's see, AWS has its own load balancing solutions. Let's see, Azure, I believe, is going to have its own. But however we do it, it's going to look fairly similar. You know, different technology, different UI, but it's going to have the same effect of spinning up servers, taking them down as we need it. And then essentially giving the requests as they come in to those different servers so that no one server is overloaded. So we're going to be researching this either on stream or off. Haven't decided yet. Now, in the future, future. In the future, we might and probably should have a web application firewall, but for now, we are not going to worry about that. What we are going to do is we're going to look up different DDoS protection strategies. I am not super familiar with the internal workings of how we can protect against DDoS. I'll be honest, this project is meant to stretch myself. It's not the type of project that I work on generally at the company I work for. So this really is going to stretch me, and there's going to be a lot that I have to research. But the way that I suspect DDoS protection is going to work is that if we're getting too many requests from a particular IP address or a block of IP addresses, then we're going to not block them, but rate limit them. And it's going to go much deeper than that, I expect. It's going to be if we're receiving too many connection open requests. This is TCP and UDP, not just HTTP. I'm not going to go over those right now. If you want, I can go over TCP, UDP, and HTTP in future videos or streams. But I'm ending this video within the next 5 minutes or so. So apologies if you aren't quite familiar with those. But the idea is that if we get too many connection open requests for TCP, but we don't have, how do I put it? If the connection is not continued with further requests, that can be a sign of a DDoS as well. If they just keep sending connection open requests. Again, we're going to research this, and most likely we're going to use a library or two instead of coding it ourselves, because really, in order to be efficient, in order to get anything done, you need to use libraries. Sometimes it's nice to code things for yourself, but if you're actually trying to make a product, you need to use libraries. Let's see. No one has joined my stream, and honestly, that is a little bit as I expected it. This is my first stream, and I'm not really sure how many people are actually going to want to watch this. But we'll see if people end up watching the video afterwards. And you guys, if you want to leave comments down below, let me know if there's a better time that I can stream for y'all. I'm not going to be streaming too much later than this, because right now, well, I think I can tell you this. I'm on the Eastern Coast, and it's almost midnight right now. But let me know if anyone ends up watching this after the fact. Let me know if there's a better day, better time that works for you all. And I hope to see you again next time. Bye.